No, there we go. Okay, welcome to this public meeting. This is a award meeting. It's not the meeting where the decision is made at planning and then approved at council. This is a meeting for the developer and for Councillor Hunt and I to listen to your concerns and for the developer to listen to your concerns and either make adjustments or make changes. So we'll be happy to hear from everybody. Sean House will be the planner on file. That's Sean right there. And Sean will introduce the rest of the staff and then he will introduce the planner for the development and the developer. Okay. And then we'll go through the plan and then we'll have questions and answers. And then we'll have the developer come up and give you some answers to those questions. Okay. Sean?
Thank you, Councillor. Sean House, planner with the City of Brantford. We're here because we received an application to amend the zoning bylaw at 72 Johnson Road. And before we get started, this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will also be available for viewing afterwards. If you're viewing and have comments that you don't want to bring up at the meeting, you can also email them directly to myself. Here with us at the meeting, we have my colleagues Holly and Darlene, who are helping out with the meeting and taking notes. So Holly's actually drafting up a detailed set of notes, listening to comments that are at this meeting. And if you signed in at the front there with your email address, I'll send you those notes a couple of weeks following this meeting once they're finalized. As Councillor Carpenter alluded to earlier, this is just a neighborhood meeting, a ward meeting, gathering feedback from the public on the proposal. And then we're targeting an August date for the actual planning committee meeting. And before that happens, you'll receive another mail out to all property owners within 120 meters, as well as a sign will be posted on the property advertising the proposal and that date. So this application is a Provincial Planning Act requirement. And so they've made that formal proposal to us. And it's to amend the zoning bylaw, which essentially states how land may be used, where buildings and other structures can be located, and the types of buildings that are permitted and how they're used. It also regulates things like lot sizes, parking requirements, building heights, that type of thing. So this application is to amend that document. And it's also something that puts our official plan into place. So there's a separate document called the official plan, and it also designates land uses throughout the city. So this property in particular has been designated residential. So, it is looking for this residential type of proposal. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant and their team now, and they're going to provide you the closer details of this application. Thanks.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Stewart, and I am with Pinevest Homes. There was a few questions that came through via email, and just kind of who is Pinevest, and I thought I'd start with that before passing it over to Scott to discuss more detail from a planning perspective. I'm here obviously with Scott Patterson, planner on the file. Bob Phillips from Cahoon Engineering is here as well, the engineer on the file, so available for questions as well when we get there. Just a bit about Pinevest Homes. We are a local builder and developer out of Paris, Ontario, and we've been building communities and homes for over a decade in the area. We've completed numerous developments with a variety of housing types that total just over 200 homes during that time. All of Pinevest Partnership Group, as well as the majority of our employees live in the Brantford and Brant County area. We're happy to call it home. Pinevest actually has built single family homes in the Grand Valley Trails subdivision. And also Garden Avenue, a townhouse development there as well. And when I mentioned the 200 homes built by Pinevest, there's some careers before Pinevest for some of us, and it's almost come full circle. Partner in Pinevest, Peter Shute, and myself were formerly at Brookfield Residential and developed Grand Valley Trails some time ago now. So we know the area quite well, and excited to be back in the city of Brantford. So thank you very much for being here tonight. We look forward to hearing your comments, and thanks to the councillors for putting on the meeting, as well as Sean, the planner on the file. So thanks. I'm going to pass it over to Scott. Thank you.
So yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Patterson with Patterson Planning Consultants. I'm a land use planner, working as a private consultant to developers when they want to proceed with a development project. So we're all here tonight to talk about 72 Johnson Road, which is a 0.478 hectare parcel of land located at the intersection of Johnson Road and Hansford Drive. The property is currently developed with a single detached dwelling and accessory buildings with 2 accesses to Johnson Road. The intent is to relocate the existing buildings and redevelop the site with 26 units in the form of residential stacked townhouses. And for those who don't know, stacked townhouses are units that share a common sidewall and are stacked vertically with 2 units on top of each other. The bottom unit occupies the ground floor and basement, and the upper unit occupies the 2nd and 3rd floors. The upper units will have a balcony and deck, and the ground floor units will have an outdoor patio. Each unit is accessible from an exterior entrance. And on the screen is just an air photo of the subject property outlined in red. So as Mr. House had mentioned, there is the official plan for the city of Brantford, and the lands are designated residential. The residential designation contemplates single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, and townhouse dwellings. There is a limitation that buildings shall be no more than 3 stories in height, and stacked townhouses are permitted use and conform to the policies of the official plan. As such, an official plan amendment is not required in support of this development. This project is considered medium density development, which is commonly referred to as the missing middle. And the official plan also designates Johnson Road as a local road. So the amendment that we're seeking is to the zoning bylaw, and the zoning is currently H-R1B-13. The R1B zone currently applying to the property permits single detached dwellings, bed and breakfast establishments, day nurseries, home occupations, and mini group homes. The H part of the zoning reflects a holding provision in the zoning. Basically, it locks in what's there today and does not allow for any other development until such time as the holding provision is lifted. And the -13 part of the zoning is a special exception, which would allow all the uses of the R1B zone when it was applied to the property, as well as any existing use that was in place at that time. So as noted, a zoning bylaw amendment is required to change the zoning on the property to allow the stacked townhouses and apply appropriate regulations. This is a copy of the concept site plan, which are also available in the side displays. So the development project includes 26 units, as I'd mentioned. There are 45 parking spaces, including 2 barrier-free parking spaces. The zoning bylaw requirement would be 39 parking spaces on site. There's in-ground garbage facilities located in the middle of the property. An on-site amenity area is proposed in the top left corner. A single access to Johnson Road is proposed, and the ability for vehicles to enter and exit the site in a forward motion. As you'll see on the screen, there's 2 buildings that are focused and face towards Johnson Road, with the other 2 buildings at the rear of the site. These are 3 stories in height. And the blue line at the top of the screen, hopefully you can see that. There's 2 blue lines. One represents the wetland limit, which has been field verified and identified. And the second blue line, which encroaches onto the property, is actually a buffer area to protect the wetland that was just located off-site. So the zoning bylaw amendment will seek to change the zoning from the R1B zone to an R4A zone. As I noted, stacked townhouses are not currently permitted in the R1B zone, so a zone change is necessary. And stacked towns are actually defined in the bylaw, but they're not permitted in any zone currently in the city of Brantford. They're only permitted through a zoning bylaw amendment. So on the screen is the full range of the R4A zoning. The regulations are noted. Everything in green for your reference is where we comply to the zoning or exceed it. And the one item in red is where we deviate from the R4A zoning requirements, and that is for lot area. So the regulations of the zoning bylaw would require 185 square meters for each unit. We're currently at 184 square meters. So it's a minor deviation from the R4A zoning. And again, just for your reference, for those not familiar with stacked townhouses, this is just an illustration of how those units are actually devised. When you walk in at grade level, your unit is at the grade level, and then you go down to the basement. So you have those two floors that comprise one unit. When you walk in at grade, you also go up a set of stairs, and the upper two floors represent another unit. So this is conceptual for how stacked townhouse works, and this would be refined going forward to suit the site. These are the conceptual building elevations that were proposed for the development. So this is the front elevation. This would be facing towards Johnson Road. A left elevation, just the side of the building that's proposed. This is to be the rear elevation that's proposed currently. And again, this shows a 4-story building, but the lower level is actually below grade. So it's 3 stories above grade. And the right elevation of the proposed building. And this was created by the project group as a rendering of what the project would look like from Johnson Road. You can see the access, which will be directly across from Hansford Drive and leading to the interior parking areas and the buildings on each side of that, and then the buildings at the back. In support of the application, we submitted an environmental impact study, again, that identified the wetland, which was located off-site, and recommended a 10-meter buffer to that feature. We submitted a traffic impact study, which resulted in no traffic improvements required on Johnson Road. We submitted an archaeological study and a planning opinion report, as well as functional servicing drawings and a report. And again, there's servicing drawings and a grading plan on the side for your reference. All of those plans and reports are currently under review by city staff. They will be reviewed for their technical nature and make sure everything complies with city requirements. And we don't have comments back on those yet. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement and conforms to the growth plan in the city of Brantford official plan. As I noted, an official plan amendment is not required. The project will result in the creation of 26 residential units. And as I noted, the wetland area has been identified and protected. The rezoning is required to implement the project, address the site-specific provision, again being the reduction in lot area per unit from 185 to 184, to lift the holding provision that's currently applicable to the property, and essentially just to allow the project to advance. Going forward, pending the successful completion of the zoning process, site plan approval will be required. For those who don't know, site plan approval is the technical design drawings related to a project. So it relates to site engineering, landscape plans, lighting plans, and all of that. So there is a detailed stage to go forward, subject to the zoning. So this is an infill development project on land that is currently underutilized. As I noted, it provides a medium density development, which is known as the missing middle. And when I say missing middle, that's a term used by the province, and it means basically the bulk of development is supposed to be single detached dwellings or either high-rise towers. This is seen as a development that kind of fits in the middle, and that's why it's called that. It's a missing product that's not typically developed or readily available. This project would assist in addressing the housing crisis that is currently occurring. It reduces the need to use farmland to build more housing. And the site is in proximity to Highway 403 and existing parks and walking trails in the area. So that concludes my brief presentation. Naturally, I'm here to answer any questions. Bob Stewart's here for any questions. Mr. Phillips from Cahoon Engineering. We have the detailed plans, and we're happy to take any comments and answer any questions that the public may have at this time. Do you want?
Yeah. All right, so thanks, Scott. So now we're going to ask anyone that wants to come up to speak to come up to the front. And when you come up, if you could just state your name and the street that you live on, just so we can have some reference for that. If you did sign in at the back with your email address, you will be entitled to receive any notifications that are going out in terms of different further steps for the property. So at this point, I'll take anybody that wants to come up to the front. Oh, just that's fine. Yeah, just have a seat there. Press the silver bar. I have a loud enough now. I'm good. And we want to record. Oh, okay, I see. All right, I'll close this forward. I was just wondering where you got the information of the traffic up and down Johnson. My name's Nicole Whitten. I live 2 doors down from that survey that's supposed to be being built. So as for the traffic, I take my dog for a walk every morning and evening. You know how many times I've been almost hit by a car? That road is ridiculous. I've called the police. They don't even bother coming down that road. If it wasn't for my son-in-law getting involved, because he's now involved with the Brantford police, the second he got there and pulled over, there was a vehicle going right through the stop sign. That traffic there is disgusting. And this is just going to make it 100 times worse. 100, it's horrible there. Like you can't even walk your animal without somebody whizzing by. There's a speed bump there. They fly over it because it's fun to them. It's just not adequate. Those big townhouses there and more traffic. Like it's crazy there. That's all I gotta say.
Okay, so I guess we'll answer the questions as they come up, and I may need to call on Bob and Bob to respond to things as well. So when I said the traffic was fine, what I meant was we've done a traffic impact study. The results of that study indicate that from a volume perspective, the road can accommodate the traffic that would be generated from this development.
Like doing that traffic thing, like how do you do that?
Well, I'm not a traffic consultant, but my understanding is that they do traffic counts based on the number of units that are being proposed. So they do the calculations based on the 26 units. They have traffic counts of what currently exists on Johnson and on Hansford. They look at growth projections of how much background growth there's going to be. They do an analysis on the intersection. They do all kinds of analysis. And they provide that report. We submitted that report as part of our submission to the city. So that report is currently under review by city staff.
Love to know who did that, because that's a shame.
Yeah, the consultant's name is Paradigm Transportation Solutions. It is a document that's readily available to the public. So it can be accessed by anyone to review. And again, I'm not familiar with the traffic considerations at that intersection, but by all means, these are the kinds of comments and concerns that we want to hear tonight. So city staff are well aware of it, and we can take a look at it as well. Yes, so by all means, please tell us those types of things. That's what we want to hear.
Okay, do we have anybody else that wants to?
Oops, sorry.
So I just wanted to follow up with what Scott said. So any of the studies that the developer has submitted to the city are public record and will be available. So you can certainly see them. But your concerns, either anything that was emailed in advance or any of the questions that are raised tonight, do form part of the public record for when the application goes before the actual planning committee for consideration. Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to come forward? Oh, yep, come on up.
And again, just name and your street.
Greg Brand, 74 Johnson Road. I come here looking for a lot grading plan. Is there one available?
Yes, there is. It's actually at the side and it's publicly available as well.
It's at the side. It's not on display.
Yeah, the grading plan's available there.
Is there? Okay, I'll have to have another look. What is proposed for the grading? Because from my property up to 72, there's quite a slope. And then it's 72 slopes down to the road. What is the proposal there?
Rob, do you
And how does it affect? Because it can hugely affect my property.
think you have to come up here, Bob? You want the plan here?
I just want to add to that water drainage has always been a concern out there. And I don't want any more water on my property.
That's fine. I'd be happy to go through the details with you on a very site-specific basis, but the intention of the design is to control the water internally. And in this case, because of the consideration of the wetland in behind, we're outletting our water to the wetland. But I'd be happy to go through with the details over there, but it's a self-contained property where we keep our own water, any development water within the development.
Is the lot being lowered?
Yes, it is to some degree. Yes.
So along my property, will there be like catch basins and storm pipe installed to?
There is, if I remember correctly, there is a swale that directs the water to a catch basin, which takes it internally, but then out to the wetland at the rear.
So if you do lower the lot 72, what, proposing retaining walls along the side or?
No, I'll show you. Like there are some limited retaining walls, but I think they're on the other side from your property. We've kind of matched in so that we could create a swale sort of down the property line along that side. I'm going to call that the east side. It's probably more north, but
I don't know how you lower your lot and not affect my lot without putting in a retaining wall.
I'd be happy to go through the.
Because I brought in a camera with pictures and we can.
Yep.
But yeah, I'd like to talk to you in detail about that.
Yep, not a problem. That's why we're here.
What about a fence or anything dividing the lots? Is there any consideration there?
Yes, eventually, as I said, this will go through site plan approval. So if pending successful completion of the zoning process, so site plan approval would look at details such as landscaping around the perimeter. It would look at fencing. It would look at buffering. That would all be dictated or detailed by the city. And through negotiation, there's a good chance, yes, there would be visual barriers and fencing put along the property lines, tree lines, buffering and things like that.
And just for the record, I'm just going to mention what you and myself and Bob Phillips were talking about over there about the proposed sidewalk that you have out front of your property. It is lined up to enter into my property. So I just wanted that on the record, and I'm curious to know what your plans are with that. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, so I think the gentleman in the back wanted to come up and speak. Just press the silver. Oh, there you go. You're on. Yep.
Jason Anderson on Davidson Court. One comment, I'd like to echo the concerns about traffic. I think bringing in 39 additional vehicles onto a regular basis on that corner is potentially dangerous to residential individuals in that area. It's been a well-known problem, Johnson Road, not necessarily just the number of units that are existing in the Grand River Trails area, but additional through traffic from Country Road 18 onto Colburn use it as a high rated speed. additional 39 vehicles potentially in that area is just going to cause increased problems. I think that needs to really be looked at and accounted for. My concerns are also two. One is that, what is the residential impact for this? And when I'm bringing up the idea of the residential impact, what considerations have been made for the fact that we are in a situation where we had to reorganize the school districts in that area because they could not afford to continue to have the amount of individuals going to Whitman-Canesville School? Has that been taken into consideration by anybody in the planning?
I don't want to speak for Mr. House, but as part of his zone change application, the school boards are circulated. So they will provide comments back to the city on any requirements, any concerns, anything like that. And that will form part of the basis for the city staff's analysis of the project going forward.
Okay, so you're aware that we had to reform our school divisions and kids have been removed from Whitman-Canesville and sent to Bray Lynn because the school can't support the amount of people that have been moved into the area because of the recent developments?
To be honest, personally, no, I was not, but we are now. So I appreciate you bringing that forward, and that'll be a consideration and part of the staff report to review and examine that for sure.
Okay, and the other question is, it's marked as a residential, and the purpose is to fill that void of the lack of residential housing in the area. What's going to be the demographic that this location is being targeted for? Because once again, when you start looking at the demographics, what type of concerns are going to be raised by that increased population coming in? You're looking at 26 families plus visitors plus extenuating circumstances or people coming in and going. Also, we don't have the structure in the area for basic amenities like a convenience store that's conveniently located for people in that area. Anybody in that area has to go onto Colborne or out into the kind of Gretzky Lindenwood or Linden area in order to do their shopping. There's no amenities in that area. You're putting increased pressures without building up the amenities. Why does that not make sense to someone to take a look at? Let's start putting in some of the resources first before we start expanding further.
Okay. So just to go back to your original question, there's multi-part. So the demographic for the property, currently each of the units is proposed to be 2-bedroom. There is an option to look at a 3rd bedroom option as well. So that's being currently tabled. The expectation for this development is that we'll have high-end finishes. It will be done at a quality level. There was some reference, and again, I don't want to get myself in trouble speaking from a planner speak, but there was some reference and some comments about low-income housing and things like that. That's not the intent for this development. Mm-hmm. I believe it will be condominiumized right from the start to avoid conversion problems later on. So it will be a condo development, and that benefits in the fact that it'll help protect the wetland. There's some features on site that need to be protected through the condo corp and things like that. Sort of as far as your demographic question, that's what I can tell you right now is that it's going to be a high quality development, 2-bedroom units, and it will be a condo project.
Okay, and what's going to be the price point, I guess, would be the other piece, because we heard about the kind of affordable housing on Colborne, and that came in at $325,000 as a starting point. So just roughly kind of estimates, where are we looking for? Are we looking for the same type of development that's beside the no frills, or is this going to be something different?
Bob, do you want to?
Thanks again for the questions. And in terms of the market, we are still early stages in trying to develop what that price point will be. Again, not generally something we want to commit to right away in terms of a price point. I'll just reiterate at this stage, a lot of history in Grand Valley Trails with our company. We know the product that's there. We want to mimic it and fit into the community as best we can. Back to the finishes, you can see from the elevations, it is tough when you look at a rendering to try to really see what it is going to look like in that end product. But you will see high-end brick and siding similar to what's in the existing subdivisions. So I can't give you a price today, but as we go through this process and there's more stages to come, as we get closer to, we'll be able to provide that at a later date. So again, sorry if I can't give you that exact number yet, but happy to keep that discussion going.
And I guess you were going to break down the rest of my questions or something.
Yeah, sorry. So I wrote down just access to convenience stores and things like that. And I guess that comes through this process as well. That city staff will speak to amenities in the area. They'll speak to transit. They'll speak to all the different things that make a complete community, parks, trails, all of that things. So that's more of a city role in planning those features.
But it's
but
part
it
of
does
this
go hand in
process
hand.
because you're
Yeah.
looking at wanting to change the plan so that you can build these houses, but yet the resources aren't there.
And again, that will be flushed out through the staff report and the recommendations. So all of the different groups and agencies at City Hall will contribute and provide comments on the proposal. The staff report may or may not speak to individual, like you say, convenience uses and things like that, but it will definitely speak to parks, schools, and those things as part of the considerations for the project.
Okay. And I guess one question, I guess that either the planners or even Richard can answer is, how is this going to impact the hockey rink that we haven't been put in yet that was promised last year? You know, if we're moving ahead with this development, maybe we should catch up on the things that have been missing or that have been left aside that haven't been done yet. Might be something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I can just speak to in terms of the parks in the area. Certainly, Councillor Carpenter and myself are, kind of well aware of development of parks that we would like to see in that area, and working with city staff in order to, kind of make those things happen. I'm new, and Councillor Carpenter's been around for a long time, but we've known each other for probably about 25 years. So we work very well together in terms of what neighborhoods in our ward need. So that's something that we certainly can take that back. Now, Sean, I don't know if you wanted to address kind of the staff review, which would look at traffic and school boards and that kind of thing.
Our guiding document for this will be the official plan. So we'll look at in our analysis, we'll look at the official plan designations around residential. And that was all also taken into account when it was previously designated this way, but something we'll certainly review. And the traffic study is with our transportation department, who does verify that and really take a close look at it. But councillors, we do have some people with us virtually as well. And so if we want to give them a chance, Darlene can.
I'm going to answer the question about the park. We've been working on the ice rink for some time. I visited the Johnson Park with our staff. Johnson Park is on a grade, and putting an ice rink there, the water's just going to run away. It's going to be very expensive. So we're moving the ice rink to the park just up the hill behind you there. So, the sidewalk goes across the road, you can go up, and that sidewalk's going to be maintained by city staff all year round in the wintertime. So you can get up there, and the ice rink's going in that location with the water hookup and the lights. Yeah. No, the new park that's being developed just up where you just go down Johnson a bit, up the steps, and you're in Belansky, right there. So it's so what we're been trying to do with this whole neighborhood, Councillor Toski and I before Councillor Hunt, was everything on the north side of the railroad tracks is all supposed to be industrial. It got converted to residential many years ago before it became Ward 4. Now the goal is to try and make what is an industrial area one homogeneous residential area with all the trails. So the intent is that all the trails that start from Woodburn Park and all the way through Mission Estates will all be connected together into that area as well, so that there's one complete trail system and all the parks have all the amenities. So that ice rink is not forgotten. It's just going to have to go to a place where it's more the ground's level and more reasonable to put it in. So it hasn't been forgotten. It's just been adjusted. And then we're looking at a possible gazebo for Johnson Park because we have had a request for that for some time. I mentioned it to the developers just in case they were interested, but I planted that seed. So anybody online?
Thanks, Councillor Carpenter. We have 3 virtual attendees. First, we'll start with Mr. Kevin Blair. Kevin, go ahead with your question.
Oh, hi. Thank you very much. Just a quick question again about, we were talking Councillor Carpenter and the needs of the residents in the ward. Do we need this development, Richard?
You're asking me if we need this development. Well, it's we don't need any development technically, but the province has mandated that we have development, and they've taken some rights away from the local council to make those decisions. And the province has mandated that we have infill. So, but all of Coburn Street, while I'm at it, is been changed to intensification corridor. So Coburn Street, where you see all those hotels that I'm working to change, remove, clean up the neighborhood. That whole Coburn Street is intensification corridor. You're going to see high-rise development all along Coburn Street. So the province sort of wants everything up instead of out. That's what they're trying to do, create more housing. They call it the more housing for more people. I don't necessarily buy that, but that's what the rules have been changed to under several pieces of legislation. So getting something that we can live with is better than getting something that we can't live with that's dictated by the province. I'm not making that as an excuse. I'm just saying that these meetings are designed so that the neighborhood can say, what's the best thing we can get for our neighborhood, for our community when it comes to development.
Well,
Development is not something the city has a say in stopping. In fact, if we don't issue a building permit in certain days, the province makes it automatic and eliminates the fees.
Well, I think we had the same issue with Colburn about a year ago, and I see it's back on the docket again where the flea market is. I see that's coincidentally come up at the same time as this development's come up at the same time, and I understand, but I think there's a lot better use of land, honestly, out by the airport on that end of Colburn, I think, than it is trying to squeeze it into somebody's single family lot.
Thank you, Kevin. Do you have any more questions or concerns?
Nope. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Daniel Stotch, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Daniel, go ahead with your question, please.
No questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Stacy Ridley Strong. Stacy, your questions?
I'm late coming to the meeting, so my question was about the parking on Johnson Road. If it's going to be enough parking and what's going to happen with the playground there. That was my concern, but I'm kind of late coming into the meeting, so this probably was already discussed.
So with regard to parking, the site itself is designed to be self-contained for parking. So recognizing you may have come in late after I said this, but the requirement is 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which would result in a requirement for 39 parking spaces. The development currently proposes 45 spaces, all contained on the subject property itself. There's be no requirement for on-street parking according to the zoning bylaw to support this project. And with regard to the playground facility, there's no changes proposed to the park across the road. What this project proposes at this time is an on-site amenity area, again, that meets zoning bylaw requirements. And each of the units actually has a private balcony or private deck and an at-grade patio as well. So the intent is that there's facilities on site specifically for these residents. And if there is naturally a public park available, that they could take advantage of that as well.
Would there by any chance be any no parking signs put up on that street for that reason?
Potentially that could come out through the staff review from the transportation group here at City Hall. I won't prejudge that or guess what their recommendations will be, but that's something that could come out of the review for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all we have for virtually.
Scott, did I hear you say this is the first time for Stack in Brantford?
No, it's my understanding there's been a Stack project approved for market. What I think I said is that stacked are not currently permitted in any zone in the bylaw. They're defined in the bylaw, so they're a recognized permitted use. But in order to be allowed, you actually have to go through this amendment process to allow them on a property. And Sean can probably correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my understanding. Okay.
When I knew the lot was going to be developed, I was hoping for single family homes. That's what fits in with the neighborhood. Then I heard townhouses and I thought, oh, okay, I can accept townhouses, thinking 2-story. That's what fits in with the neighborhood. Now I come here and I'm hearing stacked, which is 3 stories. And I'm holy. I have a little house next door. When I come out the backyard now, I'm going to be looking at walls. Because it's building right up to, I don't know, within 2 or 3 meters of the property line. And that's what I'm going to see. So my opinion is it doesn't fit. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Oh, wait, yep, we've got someone else. Come on up.
I'm Jamie. I live at 6 Davidson Court, which my backyard will back onto this new development. I just wanted to, I might ramble a little bit, but I wanted to key in on something I heard you say about the land being underutilized right now. And I'm curious what that phrase means, underutilized with respect to who. I'm the first owner of this home on 6 Davidson Court. My family moved in when it was built in 2011. When we moved in, we used to see coyotes roaming the fields. We would see deer in the backyard quite often. There was a family of hawks that we used to like to see in the trees. As that land behind us has been developed, we've seen less and less of this. I haven't seen a deer in ages. And with our neighbor behind us adapting his property to move some of those buildings, he's cut down the tree that the hawks would nest in, and we don't see those anymore. So I am worried about the country feel that we bought into disappearing slowly as things are developed. I recognize people need places to live, and people are entitled to sell their property and have things built on that property. But I am concerned about the density of what's going to go in there, how it is going to impact the use of the 2 parks, potentially 3 parks in the neighborhood. The 2 that we have are like busting at all times. When I drive home from work some days or on the weekend, I see soccer games being played in the park across the street from this development, and the kids are right up against the road. I was hopeful when we moved into Brantford that there would be a plan for development of some sort of soccer fields or baseball diamonds in the area, but that hasn't happened. And I don't know if there's land for it to happen. To walk to any sort of, other people have talked about this, to walk to any sort of business is, 15, 20-minute walk, sometimes with no sidewalks. There's no schools nearby that my kids could walk to. My daughter goes to Onondaga Brant, and it's an hour bus ride in the morning for her. I think with the plan for 26 units and 2 to 3 bedrooms, potentially, and those number of people, is there a plan for how those people who maybe don't possess a car are going to travel to and from work? Is that going to necessitate a bus route on our street, or some other plan for accommodating those people to get to and from employment?
Okay, I'll try to address your comment about what I meant by underutilized. Sure. And I think this goes back to what the counselor said as well. So the direction from our friends at the province is that sites like this should be developed to a higher order use. Larger sites that currently have a single detached house on them, if there's an opportunity to use existing services, existing infrastructure, sewer and water capacity, for example, utilize it. Don't expand, don't go out into farmland, don't keep going horizontal. As he said, go vertical. So when I say underutilized, that's a specific term that comes from the province. It's in the provincial policy statement, the growth plan. The direction we're given as planners is to try and put more people in tighter places. I respect that that's not for everyone, but that is the direction that planning consultants get, is to try and accommodate people within the urban boundary and take advantage of the existing facilities to the best we can. With regard to your comment about bus routes and things like that, again, that's something that staff will review at the staff level as part of their assessment of the project. What I think would happen, or what I've seen happen through comments, is that more development naturally brings on or spurs on the need for bus routes and better facilities such as sidewalks, transit, and things like that. So it does come with more development, but with that development comes more infrastructure because there's a need for it. And your other comments, sorry, about parks and soccer fields and things like that, I would actually defer to my colleagues here.
I know it's beyond your scope.
Okay, so. No, I don't know if you want to respond or.
You've been here the longest.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like that. Yeah, there's as far as schools go, the city has no jurisdiction over the schools. So I did talk to the Rick Petrella, the chair of the Catholic School Separate Board. And he's saying they're planning on schools on the other side of County Road 18, which is in the county. Same as someone talked earlier online about the development at the old flea market. That's also in the county lands outside our jurisdiction. We're surrounded by another city. It's called the county, but it's not a county. It's a full city just like we are. And there's a lot of room for them to grow, but where they grow is up to them. So, and as far as that park, Johnson Park's not big enough for soccer fields. And as you know, there's the stormwater management pond back there. It gets pretty mushy down in there where the geese and so forth are. But on the other park, the new park that's being developed, we're going to have a big public meeting with everybody from both areas to discuss what you want in the park and how that park gets developed. I know I've had to work on a lot of issues there regarding traffic over the years. We had the temporary speed bumps that everybody was quite happy with, and we made them permanent, but I understand they're not wide enough or high enough because we're still getting the racetrack people racing down that street, and some of them even ignoring the two stop signs. You wouldn't believe how many complaints I got from people that saying, what the hell did you put all those stop signs there for? And they're the ones taking the shortcut to get to County Road 18. That's who it is. I have the same problem on Garden Ave, and yet I haven't got my speed bumps there yet, but I'm working on that. I suspect that maybe the industry down there doesn't want them, but that area needs, if you want to go to the industry, you take Corbin Street up to County Road 18, you turn left, and then you get to the industry off of Elgin Street or Henry Street, but you don't go through Garden Ave or Johnson Road. So we may have to look at those speed bumps. We have to make them wider or higher. We will. Higher, yeah, I'm hearing that. I remember what a racetrack it was before we had anything down there, and what a fight it was just to get those things as well down there. So again, trying to make that a residential neighborhood and saying to all the transport trucks, you need to drive around. Transport trucks, I think we got most of the transport trucks off. They don't like any bumps at all. So I think the transport truck problem has been resolved, but the guys racing the cars down there. Another thing I want to throw out to you, if you see someone flying down that street and you happen to get a picture of the license plate, please send it to me. It's very sometimes a little note is very helpful that they receive a letter in the mailbox that says, something like to the effect that you were noted speeding down this street at such and such a day at such a time. If it wasn't you, please disregard this letter. If it was you, stop it. It goes a long ways. It's worked in the past, so we can try that. But anything we can do to slow that neighborhood down. I know we have sort of a group home in there, don't we, on the same street? I know where it is. Very well. So, and that hasn't seemed to be a problem other than parking. I've noticed the parking. So we're doing everything we can to try and slow that neighborhood down and make it homogeneously. And we even have the access helpful to that trail is very important to that neighborhood as it will connect. There is other development on Johnson Road up further that's, will get developed eventually. And hopefully that will give us better access to the trails from Johnson Road as well. That's the long-term goal of mine anyways, and Linda's, to connect all the trails together, make all those neighborhoods so that you can get on that trail and go through to Garden Ave, through to Woodburn Park and connect around back to Hansford as well. So all that's the long-term goal from what should never have been a development in the first place. No offense to your homes. You got beautiful homes there. And, development's going to happen in the area. The province has dictated it. So what we need to do is think about how can we make whatever development comes the best development, so at least it doesn't detract from the neighborhood. In fact, it needs to add. So if we have to get condominiums, however they are, if we can make them high end, expensive condos, maybe that's what we have to do. We have several condos coming on Garden Ave, zone for it. You see the Gray Street condos, you see what happened there. Mm-hmm. So if we can make something work, that's all I'm saying. I'm not lobbying for anybody or any development. I'm lobbying for the neighborhood. We're listening to what you everything you say gets recorded, both on YouTube and in our minutes, and it becomes part of our public record. So thanks. Hope I answered, did I answer all the questions?
I have a few more questions, but I'm okay to yield to somebody else if they want to
If you've got more questions, go ahead.
keep going. Okay.
They know.
With respect to traffic on the street and the parking, is there a plan in place for visitor parking? If each one of those units has a visitor over the course of, say, a weekend, their lot will fill up real quick, and where does the overflow go?
And I may need to defer to Sean on this, but it's my understanding that the 1.5 spaces per unit actually includes a visitor component into that. So that aggregate number, when you times the number of units by 1.5, is for the residents themselves, but also includes a visitor component. Okay. So it's all in one through that calculation.
And then I think I mentioned I back on to the site. I am concerned about the 3 stories.
Okay.
I think from the one building, they'll be able to look into my bathroom when I hop in the shower in the morning, and they might not want to see that. But more than that, the plan for the on-site amenity, which will be right in my backyard, I'll be looking onto it. What does that include?
Right now, it's just shown on the plan as an amenity space. Again, if the zoning is successful, it would need to go through site plan approval. Through site plan approval, the amenity area would actually get programmed. So whether it's an active space, whether it's a passive space with just benches, how it's buffered, how it's designed, basically, all of that would still need to be worked out. And just for your reference, the primary reason why there's an amenity space in that location is because of the wetland buffer. So what I had noted earlier with the blue lines and the setback from the wetland, there was no opportunity to put buildings in that area. So we saw it as a development team as a logical location for an amenity space.
And what I don't see on the plan is my impression was behind my fence, there was supposed to be like a wetland causeway that I was told when we bought the house wouldn't be developed on. And I don't know if I see it on the plan, but I mean, we can look at that later individually. We don't need to.
Yeah, we should look at the individual plans and we can talk through that if you'd like.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's it for me. Thank you.
I want to make a quick comment about site plan. Site plan approval goes through Linda and I, by the way. So if what you'd like to see, whether it be fencing, whether it be buffering, whether it be trees, whether it be sidewalk, whether it be no parking, all those issues are important and they get recorded. But everything that in the site plan before it comes forward and gets approved for building permit, Linda and I get to see that and get to approve that. So there is a process in place where we as your ward councillors try and make sure everything that you had suggested is included in the site plan. So there is some safety there in the sense that you could then kick our butts out of there if we don't do what you want. So. Okay.
I'm Jason Phillips. I'm on 24 Davidson Court. Most of my neighbors, except for Jane, Jamie, aren't here. I just want to reiterate that it's a spot that seems to just be in use to jam pack an apartment. So it doesn't fit the area, like one of the other gentlemen said. Number 2, if we got 45 cars coming in and out, we got a park there, we got lots of kids around. It just increases chance for injury, accidents, maybe. You know, as far as the speed bumps there, I know most of the cars that kind of come in and out. I think for the most part, the people in the neighborhood, the community, you know, are kind of not speeding and things like that. It's the guys that are cutting through, right? So it just seems like it's a punishment for the people that live there, for the people that don't live there. I don't know. It's just another comment. And probably the last thing there, just to note, is that all these guys have mentioned the same thing. So I just I don't want to repeat it too much. I just want to reiterate it. But it's a neighborhood where, you know, a lot of people are single family homes. We moved out there. I'm original owner from 2010. You know, that outskirts country living without actually getting out to the country was a thing that drew me there. Right now I have to be in an area where it might get overpopulated. There's not the resources like Jay mentioned, all the restructuring of the school zones and things like this. It's a concern. So I just don't want to get to a point where, I can't live in a neighborhood that's just overpopulated now. It's not able to sustain, what we're putting into there. Even if, fine, it's a lot in there that we might see 2, maybe 3 homes at best go in there. Now we're seeing 26 families coming in. So again, it doesn't fit. I don't want to sell my house. I like my house. I like my neighbors. I like my neighborhood. The live community that went across, it was, it's far enough away. I liked the rolling hills of the country. That's why I was moved there. I got the best of both worlds, but that community went up. I'm sure that it affected the people on Johnson Road, which were all there first. They've had to put up with a lot more than I have coming in to the area. This is just one more ding on it. I'm afraid it's just going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back type of thing for a lot of people. And, this was where they planned to be for a long time. So anyway, just wanted to reiterate.
Nope.
Just in follow-up, I guess there's one thing that stood out, and that, Richard, you mentioned about the plowing, that lane is going to be plowed. Right now, I think last year we were plowed once across the ravine. So I'm sorry, it's not a simple solution. That area is paying some of the highest taxes in Brantford for the least amount of services that we're receiving. What is going to be the impact on our taxes for the infrastructure that's going to be required to be put in for these units? How much is going to be offset on me as a homeowner who's already paying a high-end amount of taxes for the city of Brantford not receiving the services?
The developer has to pay for all those services, so there won't be any increase to you. But to your other question about the snow plowing, it wasn't acceptable to me either. And we actually passed a resolution to review all the snow plowing and formed a committee to do just that. And we're asking for a higher level of snow plowing than what was expected on Hansford. The whole subdivision actually was last on every time. Prior to this, we used to have, they would start the green route and the blue route and the red route, but they would start them, one snow time they would start doing that route in this area. Second time, they would start them in that area. So, but in this case, they've been starting them at the same time all the time and getting to your area last.
Okay.
And so the structure now should be for them to rotate that. And we're going to be asking in this budget for a higher level of plowing out there. It's not unacceptable with the snow plowing that happened out there. Unacceptable to me. One lane going up Barrett was ridiculous, and it turned into ice all the way up, but I was down there, I saw it. And the pathway going across, that's a paved pathway, it's supposed to be cleaned. And I raised that, that shouldn't be happening again. And the access to the park for the ice rink should be cleaned. We have to enforce it as councillors, and the pathway across over to the other subdivision should be clean as well. That's a walkway. That's the to and fro rather than going around. That's the whole idea of making those neighborhoods collected together and not plowing it is a mistake and not something that's acceptable to me or Linda.
Yeah, and no, I understand that the initial infrastructure costs are borne by the developers. The after effect, how much is my taxes going to be impacted because of 26 additional units that were placed in, and those demands on the ongoing infrastructure in the area?
The infrastructure can handle the extra capacity. The development of the whole development there, for example, that where realistically we look at impact on taxes, the pumping station that's there as part of the park, on the corner of the park, those pumping stations the developer pays for, they're very expensive. But after they're in, and they need to be replaced 15 years later, it's on us, the taxpayer. So sometimes development, realistically, putting in pumping stations costs us money taxpayers down the road, not at first, but certainly do later on. That pumping station is already under review for any upgrades it might need as part of the normal review of our pumping station.
So then is this development going to be bearing the cost for that upgrade then because they're putting the additional stressors on it?
Well, I think this development will be paying development charges or the development. Okay, they will be because the province is working to eliminate development charges which is developers pay development charges for every building, extra police, extra library services, so forth. There's development charges per unit. There was on your homes when they were built. The current government's trying to eliminate development charges and parkland fees, in fact, to make more development happen faster is what they say. But that means our municipality would lose up to $40 million a year in development charges that we need to support infrastructure. So your infrastructure question is a good one, but it's for all development.
Okay. And I guess, I'm hearing very clearly from people saying that they're not opposed to this outright. They're opposed to the fact that it's 3 stories and that does not fit into any part of this development area, including Belansky Farm Road, which is the newest development that is only 2-story. Yeah. So maybe the developers really need to hear that piece, that although this is money driven to get as many units in that place as possible, it's not what the community wants. It's not what the community needs. That is definitely not what we want to be looking at in this community for ourselves. Yep. We've spent the money to buy houses in this area because of a certain layout that was there.
That's why we're having this meeting, so we can hear from those people that are most affected in the area. That's what this is all about. That all becomes part of the record.
Thanks.
And by the way, if I skip out in the next few minutes, because I've got another meetings, Linda will stay. It's not that I'm ignoring you. You can still email me or email Linda anytime. And if you, after this meeting, you're talking to your neighbors and something else comes up, you can email Sean or Linda or myself. It'll still form part of the report. So nothing. So you may get home and think, oh, I should have said this, or your neighbor might say to you, oh, did this come up? And you can raise those issues by email and it'll become part of the report still. Sorry.
So just following up to that, I did put a stack of business cards at the back. Richard does have to run. He said he had to be there at 7. But the business cards at the back, they're 2-sided. So you can contact either myself or Richard if you have any other concerns. I think, Bob, you were going to discuss the actual grading with this gentleman whose property is just from what you said your address was going to be right next door. And does anyone else want to come forward and add any questions, comments, concerns, good, bad, or otherwise? You can, come on up. No, seeing none. Scott, do you have anything to kind of wrap up with, or Sean? So just in terms of next steps, Sean, can you just maybe come and give us a little bit of a timeline? I know that Scott did allude to the fact that it's anticipated this will go to the planning committee in August. So yeah, maybe we could just speak to kind of a time frame for next steps.
Sure. So yeah, that's right. We're targeting that August time frame for the meeting. The Planning Act, it tells us how quickly we need to process applications, which is quite fast. So another mail out will go out advertising that August meeting, and that's for the Planning Committee where the decision will be made on the application. And again, there'll be an opportunity for all of you to come out and speak for or against the application if you wish. So you could expect something in the mail around the end of July for all properties within 120 meters. And then, yeah, if you didn't feel like asking a question, in front of everyone, myself or Scott are happy to, talk afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up with that. So in terms of Sean's alluded to the Planning Act. So the provincial government did bring in legislation. I believe it's called More Homes Built Faster. So, if you have any questions about how these developments are now, as Scott has said, underutilized land. A lot of it is driven by the provincial government's mandate to build. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's a number, and it's so many houses a year over the next 10 years to address the housing crisis, and that's what that legislation was brought in for. And what ends up happening is that us at the municipal level, so you as residents in the municipal level and us as councillors and certainly city staff are, you know, kind of bound by the provincial regulations that have been set. And so that's why we have these kind of meetings, so that we can do, as Richard said, we can do the best that we can for the residents of the area, because that's what you elected us to do, is to kind of be your voice and speak. And it's our hope that you feel comfortable enough to thank you for coming out to this meeting and having your voices heard. And as we said, they do form part of the public record. And then further to that, any emails. So I think there were about 4 emails that were received. I do know one of the gentlemen that was online did send an email. So again, all of those form part of the public record that is considered as this application goes through its process here with the city. Okay, so with that, if no one has any further questions, I don't know if Scott, you've got any further wrap up. I just want to again thank you so very much for coming out, and if you have put your email down at the back, or if you're online and you're watching and you did email information in, you now will be on the list to be contacted. Even if you're outside that 120 meter zone, you are on the list to be contacted about further steps in this process for this particular development. So thank you all again for coming, and have a great night.